Big news. Archangel Micheal says, your soulmate is happier than ever. Because you finally did this. Listen to me right now. Do not move. Do not look away. Archangel Micheal has stepped forward with a message that has been sealed until this exact moment. Your soulmate is happier than they have been in years. And the reason is because of what you finally did. This is not random. This is not for the masses. Heaven selected your spirit to receive these words while the rest of the world sleeps in distraction. If you skip even 1 second of this message, the confirmation that was meant to settle in your chest will pass you by. I will not call your name again if you leave. Something serious is coming. This is not a joke. You are not crazy for the sudden peace that has been trying to enter your heart these past days. You are not imagining the lightness that appears when you think of them. Heaven has seen everything. You finally released the grip. You finally stopped forcing the door. You finally chose your own spirit over the endless waiting. And the moment you did it, the chains that had been choking your soulmate's joy began to break. Feel that. That quiet knowing in your stomach right now is not coincidence. It is recognition. Archangel Micheal stands between you and the screen with his sword drawn. He says the happiness rising in your soulmate's life is real. It is not a new person. It is not a distraction. It is the direct result of the spiritual decision you made when no one was watching. You cut the cord of control. You stopped begging the universe with tears that only drained your power. You stood up inside your own energy and said, I will no longer dim so they can shine. And heaven answered. But do not celebrate yet. Because the same force that tried to keep both of you in pain has noticed the shift. Hidden eyes are watching the light that just returned to your soulmate. And they are already planning how to dim it again, through you. You have been feeling the strange mixture, haven't you? Joy for them mixed with a sudden heaviness in your own chest. A soft smile when you think of their happiness, followed by an unexplained wave of anxiety at 3 a.m. That is not your imagination. That is the spiritual backlash beginning. Family members who once encouraged your connection are about to speak words that sound caring but carry poison. Close friends who smiled when you cried will suddenly suggest that maybe it is time to move on completely. The enemy uses familiar voices. Heaven has seen every conversation that has already been planned against your peace. Do not skip this. If you leave now, you will regret the protection that was about to be spoken over you. This message is only for you. Archangel Micheal has been standing at the threshold of your soulmate's heart for weeks. The moment you finally surrendered the outcome, he was allowed to enter fully. That is why their laughter has returned. That is why their shoulders have dropped. That is why the heaviness that once sat on their spirit like wet clothes has begun to lift. You did that. Not by chasing. Not by proving. But by finally choosing the higher path when every part of your flesh screamed to hold on tighter. Yet the war is not over. The same dark assignment that kept the two of you in cycles of almost and not yet has shifted strategy. It can no longer keep your soulmate in depression, so it will now try to use guilt, distance, and third-party interference to make you question the very decision that set them free. You are already feeling the first waves. Sudden doubts at the exact moment peace tries to settle. Old memories replaying with new intensity. A strange urge to reach out, just to check, even though your spirit knows the season of silence is still sacred. That urge is not pure. It is the enemy testing the new boundary you set in the spirit. Heaven is intervening right now. Archangel Micheal has placed his blade between your old patterns and your new destiny. But he requires your full attention. If you treat this message lightly, the covering that was prepared for the next 72 hours will remain sealed. You were chosen to hear this because your soulmate's happiness is tied to your continued strength. The enemy knows that if you fall back into old emotional patterns, the light returning to them will flicker. That is why the attack is intensifying around you personally. Do not be afraid. But do not be casual either. This is not a soft word. This is a wartime briefing from the commander of heaven's armies. Type Amen 111 right now if you receive this covering over the connection that heaven is restoring. The revelation continues. And what Archangel Micheal shows next will explain exactly why the joy in your soulmate's life is only the beginning. And why the next 3 days carry both the greatest protection and the sharpest spiritual danger you have faced in a long time. Stay. Do not move. The sword is still raised. Archangel Micheal has not lowered his sword. He stands closer now. His voice is not gentle. It is the sound of metal striking stone. He says the happiness rising in your soulmate is only the first crack in a wall that was built to keep both of you separated. That wall is cracking because you finally did the one thing the darkness never expected. You stopped fighting for the connection with your own strength. And you placed the entire weight of it into the hands of the Most High. That single act of surrender sent a shockwave through the spiritual realm. Your soulmate felt it before you did. The heaviness that had sat on their chest for months began to lift without explanation. The fog that made every decision feel heavy started to clear. They began to laugh again at small things. They began to sleep through the night. They began to feel the quiet return of hope. And they do not yet fully understand why. But heaven understands. And the enemy understands even more clearly. That is why the attack has shifted from them onto you. The darkness knows it can no longer keep your soulmate locked in sorrow. So it will now try to make you the weak link. It will try to drag you back into the old emotional patterns so the light returning to them begins to dim again. You have already felt the first strikes. Sudden waves of loneliness that feel heavier than before. Dreams where they appear distant or with someone else. A strange pressure in your chest every time you try to rest in the peace you fought so hard to find. These are not random emotions. These are targeted arrows. Family members will soon speak words that sound wise but carry the exact frequency of doubt the enemy needs. Someone close to you is already rehearsing a conversation that will sound caring on the surface. Yet it is designed to make you question whether the silence you are holding is actually strength or just fear. Heaven has seen the script they plan to use. Do not be surprised when it comes. You are not crazy. The uneasiness you have been carrying is confirmation that the shift is real. The enemy only fights this hard when something sacred is being restored. Archangel Micheal steps forward again. His wings create a wind that moves through the room you are in right now. He declares that the Most High has marked this season as the beginning of divine realignment. Your soulmate's joy is not temporary. It is the first fruit of a covenant that was written long before either of you were born. But the fruit must be protected. The same forces that once kept both of you in cycles of almost and not yet have now received new orders. They cannot destroy the joy. So they will attempt to make you the one who accidentally poisons it. Through desperate messages. Through emotional reactions. Through returning to old patterns the moment the silence feels too long. That is why this message is urgent. That is why heaven interrupted your day. The next 72 hours are critical. What you do with your emotions, your words, and your focus in this window will either seal the covering or create a crack the enemy can enter through. Archangel Micheal has been assigned to stand between you and every spirit of premature action. He is here to guard the boundary you finally set. But he will not override your free will. If you reach out in panic. If you break the sacred silence because fear gets louder than faith. The protection that was prepared will have to step back. This is not a soft season. This is a wartime alignment. Feel the weight of that. Heaven has seen every tear you cried in private. Heaven has recorded every time you chose not to send the message your fingers typed and deleted. Those choices were not small. They were the exact keys that unlocked the door your soulmate is now walking through into greater peace. Do not let the enemy rewrite the story. Do not let doubt convince you that their happiness means they no longer need you. Their happiness is the evidence that the connection is being purified, not cancelled. Write, "Cover my family," if you refuse to let this attack succeed against the restoration heaven has begun. The divine intervention is intensifying. Archangel Micheal is not alone. The host of heaven has been released to reinforce the boundary around both of your spirits. But the covering requires your agreement. It requires that you stay in the posture that first opened the door. Stay surrendered. Stay silent when silence is required. Stay firm when the old urges rise. Because something serious is still approaching. The enemy will not accept this shift without one final concentrated strike. And that strike is aimed directly at your peace in the next 3 days. You were chosen to receive this warning because your obedience in this hour determines how quickly the full restoration can unfold. Your soulmate's current happiness is the beginning, not the end. Archangel Micheal raises his sword higher. He is about to reveal the exact nature of the attack that is forming. And the specific protection that has already been assigned to crush it. Do not leave. The next words are sealed for those who stayed. Archangel Micheal's voice cuts through every distraction in the room. He says the covering has already been released. It is not coming later. It is active right now over the space between you and your soulmate. The Most High has issued a direct command. No spirit of interference is permitted to reverse the joy that has returned to their heart. No third party is allowed to plant seeds of confusion that would make them question the peace they are finally tasting. And no emotional reaction from you is permitted to reopen the old portal of pain. This is divine intervention in real time. Heaven is not watching from a distance. Heaven has stepped into the middle of the story. Archangel Micheal spreads his wings wider. The atmosphere around you shifts. He declares that the same power that raised dry bones is now guarding the emotional and spiritual link that connects the two of you. Your soulmate's sudden happiness is not accidental. It is the visible sign that the unseen war has turned. Yet the enemy is not surrendering. It is regrouping. In the next 3 days it will attempt one concentrated push designed to make you feel abandoned, forgotten, or replaced. Dreams will try to plant images that are not from God. Old messages may resurface at the exact moment your heart softens. People who have no spiritual authority in your life will offer opinions that sound logical but carry the frequency of fear. Do not receive them. Archangel Michael has already stationed angels at every entry point. But those angels respond to your agreement. If you open the door through panic, through desperate reaching, or through replaying old wounds, the covering must step aside. You are not ordinary. You are the one who finally chose surrender when everything in your flesh wanted to control the outcome. That choice marked you. It placed a seal on your spirit that the darkness cannot ignore. That is why the attack feels personal. That is why the pressure has increased the moment peace tried to settle. You are targeted because you are chosen. You carry a calling that requires both of you to walk in greater light. The enemy knows that a healed, aligned, and surrendered version of you and your soulmate becomes a threat to every assignment of delay, division, and distraction that was written against your bloodline. That is why the fight intensified the moment you released the grip. Your obedience activated something the darkness feared. Archangel Michael now places his sword across the threshold of your heart. He says no weapon formed against the restoration will prosper. But you must refuse to pick the weapon back up yourself. You must refuse to return to the old ways of chasing, proving, or collapsing. The protection is already surrounding you. It is surrounding your soulmate. It is surrounding every conversation, every thought, and every future moment that still belongs to the two of you. Feel it. The heaviness that tried to sit on your chest is being confronted. The sudden loneliness is being challenged by a higher peace. The fear that their happiness means the end is being exposed as a lie. Their happiness is the evidence that the purification is working. It is the sign that the connection is being refined by fire and will come forth cleaner than before. Sow your seed of faith now by sending a coffee on Ko-Fi if you receive this covering. This is not a request for money. This is an act of spiritual agreement. When you sow in the moment of revelation, you lock the word into the earth. Archangel Michael continues. He reveals that the next wave of protection is specifically assigned against every spirit of premature contact, every spirit of emotional sabotage, and every spirit of third-party interference. Those spirits have been given a deadline. They must flee. But the deadline requires your continued posture of surrender. Stay in the place that first opened the door. Do not let the silence scare you back into old patterns. The silence is not emptiness. The silence is the womb where the next chapter is being formed. You were marked for this. You were chosen to carry the weight of this obedience because your spirit is strong enough. Heaven does not place this level of responsibility on the fragile. You are not fragile. You are a warrior who finally learned when to lower the sword of your own will so the sword of the Lord could rise higher. That is why your soulmate is happier than ever. Because you finally did the hardest thing. You trusted the process when you could not see the outcome. The protection is increasing. The angels assigned to this assignment are multiplying. But the window of greatest intensity is still open. Do not leave this message yet. The final instructions for the next 72 hours are about to be released. They will tell you exactly how to walk so the covering remains unbroken. Stay. The sword is still raised over your life. You are not just another person watching a video. You are the one heaven marked. You are the one who finally did what few are willing to do. You released the outcome when every emotion screamed to hold tighter. That decision placed a seal on your spirit that cannot be erased. Archangel Michael declares it again for the record of heaven and hell. You are chosen. You are targeted. You are protected. The reason the attack feels so personal is because your calling is not small. When you and your soulmate stand in alignment, something shifts in the spiritual atmosphere around both of your bloodlines. Old cycles of delay, heartbreak, and almost but not yet begin to break permanently. That is why the darkness fought so hard to keep you in control mode. That is why it is fighting even harder now that you have stepped into surrender. Your soulmate's current happiness is the first visible sign that the old assignment is collapsing. But the collapse is not quiet. It is violent in the unseen realm. And the leftover resistance is now aimed at the only place it still has access: your emotions, your thoughts, and your willingness to stay in the posture that first opened the door. Archangel Michael stands as the commander of this covering. He has assigned specific angels to every entry point the enemy planned to use. Angels at the gate of your mind. Angels at the gate of your sleep. Angels at the gate of every conversation that tries to enter your life in the next 3 days. No weapon formed against this restoration will prosper. But you must not hand the weapon back to the enemy with your own hands. Do not send the message that was already deleted 3 times. Do not reopen the door through soft panic. Do not let loneliness convince you that silence equals abandonment. Silence in this season is not abandonment. Silence is sacred construction. Heaven is building something that cannot be rushed by human impatience. You have been feeling the weight of being the strong one. You have carried the emotional labor for longer than most people will ever know. Heaven saw every night you stayed quiet when you wanted to break. Heaven recorded every time you chose peace over proving. Those choices were not weakness. They were the exact obedience that allowed Archangel Michael to move. That is why your soulmate is happier than ever. Because you finally did the one thing that shifted the entire battlefield. You stopped trying to be the source of their joy. And you became the vessel that allowed the true source to pour without obstruction. The protection over you is not temporary. It is covenant. It is written. It is enforced by the same power that parted seas and shut the mouths of lions. Yet the next 72 hours remain high alert. The enemy knows the covering is active. It will try one last concentrated wave before the window closes. This wave will come through sudden emotional spikes, unexpected memories, and voices that sound familiar but carry foreign intent. When it comes, do not interpret it as failure. Interpret it as confirmation that the shift is real. The harder the push, the closer the breakthrough. Comment 333 to activate the 3 angels' protection over your household and over the connection heaven is restoring. Stay in agreement. Stay in the posture. Stay surrendered. Archangel Michael now speaks a direct word over your spirit. He says the same power that returned laughter to your soulmate is also returning strength to you. The exhaustion you have been carrying is being confronted. The quiet grief that sat under your smile is being lifted. You are not being left behind while they rise. You are being prepared to meet them at a higher level. This is the protection section of the assignment. You are covered. Your soulmate is covered. The timeline is covered. Every future conversation that still belongs to the two of you is already under the shadow of the Almighty. But covering requires continued alignment. Do not break ranks in the final hours of the greatest intensity. The clock is moving. The next 3 days are not ordinary days. They are threshold days. What you do with your focus, your words, and your emotional responses in this window will determine how cleanly the next chapter opens. Archangel Michael raises his sword one final time in this portion of the message. He is about to release the exact instructions for how to walk through the remaining hours without creating a single crack in the covering. Do not leave. The final charge is coming. The urgency is increasing. Heaven is still speaking. The time is no longer open-ended. The window is measured. Archangel Michael speaks with the full authority of the throne. The next 72 hours are sealed as the most decisive stretch of this entire assignment. What you do before midnight tonight, what you refuse to do in the next 24 hours, and how you carry yourself across the full 3 days will determine how cleanly the covering remains. Do not treat these hours lightly. If you ignore this charge, the protection that has been spoken will still stand. But the acceleration that was prepared for you will be delayed. Heaven does not force partnership. Heaven responds to agreement. Something serious is still moving in the unseen. The final wave of resistance will try to crest before the 72 hours close. It will come as a sudden emotional pull, a memory that feels more vivid than usual, or a quiet suggestion that maybe the silence has lasted long enough. When it comes, you already know the response. You stay. You do not reach. You do not explain. You do not reopen what heaven has closed for purification. Your soulmate's happiness is not the end of the story. It is the evidence that the story has finally turned. The same God who restored their joy is now restoring your strength, your clarity, and your capacity to meet them without the old wounds leading the way. Archangel Michael declares the covering locked. No weapon formed against this restoration will prosper. No third party will succeed in rewriting the timeline. No spirit of premature action will override the posture that first opened the door. But the lock requires your continued obedience. Stay surrendered. Stay silent when silence is holy. Stay firm when the old patterns knock. Sow your seed of God's grace by sending a coffee on Ko-Fi to seal this protection over your family and over the connection heaven is restoring. Your $20 contribution goes a long way in expanding our reach and multiplying your blessings. This is not about money. This is about agreement in the Spirit. When you sow at the moment the word is sealed, you drive the stake deeper into the ground. The final charge is simple and non-negotiable. For the next 3 days you will not act from fear. You will not interpret silence as rejection. You will not allow loneliness to become a door. You will rest in the same surrender that first made your soulmate happier than they have been in years. That surrender is still the key. That surrender is still the open heaven. That surrender is still the reason the light returned to them. And the reason the light is now returning to you. You were chosen for this. You were marked for this. You were strong enough to release when releasing felt like dying. And because you did, heaven moved. Archangel Michael lowers his sword only after the covering is fully enforced. He says the assignment is complete for this hour. The word has been delivered. The protection is active. The timeline is in the hands of the Most High. Do not skip the wait of these final seconds. If you have stayed until now, the message has already begun to work inside you. Let it finish. Subscribe now so you never miss the next warning heaven sends for you. Stay under this covering. Stay in the posture. Stay ready. The same God who made your soulmate happier than ever because you finally released, is the same God who will make the full restoration greater than anything either of you imagined. It is finished in the Spirit. Now walk it out in the flesh. The sword remains raised over your life. The covering remains unbroken. The next 72 hours belong to heaven. Go in the strength of this word. Do not look back. Do not shrink. The God who saw your private obedience is the same God who is rewriting the public story. Amen. It is done.